Story number 1. Whispers from Room 217. Winter in Boston has a way of amplifying the city's inherent chill, both in temperature and atmosphere. The streets, slick with ice and shadowed by towering skyscrapers, carry an almost palpable sense of isolation, even amidst the bustling urban life. I had been working the night shift at the Harborview Hotel for over 3 years, becoming accustomed to the solitude that came with being the sole guardian of the establishment after midnight. The hotel, an old Victorian building with creaking floors and ornate woodwork, stood as a relic amidst the modern glass facades surrounding it. On a particularly cold December night in 2015, the wind howled relentlessly, rattling the windows and making the halls of the Harborview echo with every gust. I was halfway through my rounds, ensuring that every light was off and every door securely locked, when the phone rang. It was a standard procedure call, asking for extra towels in a room. I glanced at the screen, Room 217. A flicker of confusion crossed my mind. Room 217 wasn't booked that night. The reservation system was clear. No one had checked in under that number, and I couldn't recall any walk-ins for that room. Shaking off the oddity, I picked up the receiver. Harborview Hotel. This is Mark. How may I assist you? The voice on the other end was soft, tinged with desperation. Please, I need more towels in room 217. It's very cold. I frowned, tapping my finger against the receiver. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't have any records of a reservation for room 217 tonight. There was a pause, then a sigh. Please, it's urgent. I glanced at the reservation logs again, confirming once more that room 217 was indeed empty. I'm afraid I can't assist you without a reservation. Perhaps you meant a different room. The caller's voice grew faint. No, room 217. Please hurry. Before I could respond, the line went dead. My mind raced with questions. Could there have been a mistake? A last-minute change that wasn't updated? Or was this a prank? Deciding to err on the side of caution, I grabbed a towel bundle from the supply closet and made my way to room 217. The corridors were dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the antique lamps that lined the hallways. As I approached the room, a chill ran down my spine, the air feeling unnaturally cold despite the central heating. I reached out and knocked softly on the door. Room 217. This is Mark from the hotel. I heard you needed more towels, I announced, waiting for a response. Silence. I pushed the door open gently, my flashlight piercing the darkness inside. The room was exactly as expected, empty, with the standard furnishings arranged neatly. Yet, something felt off. The bed, covered in pristine white linens, seemed untouched, yet an eerie stillness hung in the air. I placed the towels on the nightstand, noticing for the first time a single, wilted flower in a vase, an oddity in an otherwise immaculate room. My heart pounded as I turned to leave, the door closing softly behind me. As I walked back down the corridor, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Later that night, as I sat in the security office reviewing surveillance footage, I decided to check room 217 again. The cameras showed nothing unusual. The room remained empty, the shutters tightly closed against the winter chill. I leaned back in my chair, trying to dismiss the lingering unease. But then, a movement caught my eye. On the screen, room 217's door slowly creaked open, revealing a fleeting silhouette that quickly vanished before I could make sense of it. My breath caught in my throat as I rewound the footage, watching in disbelief as a shadowy figure appeared and disappeared within seconds. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I contacted the front desk manager. Lisa, you need to see this, I said, sending her the footage. There's something wrong with room 217. She reviewed the video, her expression turning serious. We need to investigate this. I'll come down right away. Moments later, Lisa arrived, her presence bringing a semblance of reassurance. Let's go take a look together, she suggested. We approached room 217 once more, the door now slightly ajar despite being locked earlier. I pushed it open, flashlight in hand, and we stepped inside. The room was as empty as before, but the atmosphere was thick with an oppressive energy. The wilted flower now lay on the floor, petals scattered around it. "Did you see anything?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, pointing to the flower. "Look at this. It wasn't here before." Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the icy air. A soft, sorrowful whisper filled the room, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Help me." We turned to each other, fear evident in our eyes. Before we could react, the room seemed to distort, the walls bending and stretching in impossible ways. The shadowy figure from the footage materialized before us, a ghostly apparition of a man in his late 30s, his face contorted with pain and longing. "Who are you?" Lisa demanded, stepping forward with a mixture of fear and authority. The apparition's voice was hollow, echoing through the room. "I'm trapped here. I can't move on." I felt a surge of empathy amidst the terror. "What happened to you?" The ghostly figure reached out a translucent hand, his fingers barely grazing the air. "I died in this room. A tragic accident. No one knew. No one remembered." We exchanged glances, realizing the depth of his suffering. "We're sorry you had to go through this alone," I said softly. "Is there something we can do to help you find peace?" The apparition's form began to shimmer, the sorrow in his eyes deepening. "Remember me. Acknowledge my existence. Help me move on." Determined to assist, Lisa and I decided to honor his memory. We retrieved old records from the hotel's archives, piecing together the details of his untimely death, a construction worker who had perished in a sudden collapse within room 217. His body never recovered, his story lost in the annals of forgotten tragedies. That night, we prepared a small memorial in the room, lighting candles, placing flowers, and speaking his name with reverence. As we conducted the ritual, the oppressive energy began to lift, the room growing warmer, the sorrowful whispers transforming into gentle, grateful sighs. The apparition watched us, his eyes reflecting a newfound peace. "Thank you," he whispered, his form beginning to fade. "I can finally rest." As dawn broke, room 217 felt different, lighter, more serene. The wilted flower had wilted further, but the room no longer held the weight of sorrow. We knew that his spirit had found the closure he so desperately sought. In the weeks that followed, the strange occurrences ceased entirely. The room remained booked, the lights steady, and the atmosphere peaceful. The story of the haunted room 217 became a legend within the Harborview Hotel, a testament to the power of compassion and the importance of remembering those who have been forgotten. That winter night remains etched in my memory, a reminder that even in the coldest, most isolated places, the echoes of the past can reach out, seeking acknowledgement and peace. If you ever find yourself alone in a quiet place, haunted by shadows and whispers, remember our story. Sometimes, the spirits that linger are not there to haunt but to seek recognition and closure. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the peace it so desperately needs. Because in the silent hours of winter, beneath the veil of shadows, the whispers of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 2. The Shadow on the Balcony. Winter in Japan brings a serene beauty that masks the underlying stillness of the night. The snow blankets the city in a quiet embrace, reflecting the soft glow of lanterns and streetlights onto the pristine streets. It was December 2013 when my wife, our teenage daughter, Yumi, and I decided to spend our winter vacation at the prestigious Sakura Heights Hotel in Tokyo. Renowned for its impeccable service and breathtaking views, the hotel promised an unforgettable retreat from our bustling lives. The Sakura Heights stood tall and elegant, its modern architecture harmoniously blending with traditional Japanese aesthetics. Upon arrival, we were greeted by Mr. Tanaka, the hotel manager, whose warm smile and polite demeanor immediately put us at ease. "Welcome to Sakura Heights. We hope you enjoy your stay," he said, guiding us to our room on the 23rd floor. Our suite was spacious, adorned with minimalist decor and large windows that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The room was a haven of comfort, with a plush king-sized bed, a cozy seating area, and a balcony that extended outward, providing an unobstructed view of Tokyo's glittering lights. That first evening, as we settled into our routine, a sense of tranquility enveloped us. We dined at the hotel's exquisite restaurant, savoring sushi and other delicacies that delighted our palates. After dinner, we returned to our suite, the sounds of the city below blending with the gentle hum of the heating system. Around midnight, as the clock struck 12, I felt an inexplicable urge to gaze out the balcony. Wrapped in a soft blanket, I approached the window, peering into the darkness beyond. The city lay quiet, the streets empty except for the occasional flicker of a distant car light. It was then that I noticed it, a shadowy figure standing on the far side of the balcony railing. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the light or perhaps a passerby seeking shelter from the cold. But as I stared, the figure became more distinct. A man dressed in a dark coat, his posture unnaturally still. My heart began to race, a chill creeping down my spine despite the warmth of the blanket. "Yumi, come look at this," I called softly, unsure if I was imagining things. Aiko joined me at the window, her eyes widening as she too saw the mysterious figure. Yumi, curious and unafraid, approached with a flashlight in hand, her youthful enthusiasm contrasting sharply with our growing unease. We shone the light towards the figure, but as soon as the beam touched him, he vanished. The darkness reclaimed him instantly, leaving behind only the empty balcony railing and a lingering sense of dread. When we turned back, the glass door was smeared with indistinct handprints, as if someone had pressed against it from the outside. "That's odd," Aiko murmured, her voice tinged with concern. "I don't remember anyone outside the balcony railing." We tried to rationalize the experience. Perhaps it was a reflection from a neighboring building or a shadow cast by the city's lights. Nevertheless, the unsettling feeling persisted, making it difficult to shake off the night's eerie encounter. The following night, the same sequence of events unfolded. Around midnight, the shadow appeared once more pronounced this time, his presence commanding attention. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to investigate. Grabbing a flashlight, I approached the balcony, the cold air biting through my jacket. As I stepped onto the balcony, the wind picked up, swirling snowflakes around me. The shadow reappeared, standing at the far end of the railing, gazing directly into my eyes. My breath caught in my throat as I realized there was something familiar about him, a reflection of my own features, yet distorted and twisted by an unearthly aura. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice wavering between fear and curiosity. The figure remained silent, his presence overwhelming. Suddenly, he extended a hand towards me, the gesture both inviting and foreboding. Before I could react, a surge of energy pulsed through the balcony, and the figure began to fade, his form dissolving into the night like mist. Stunned, I stumbled back, my mind racing to comprehend what had just transpired. Yumi and Aiko rushed to my side, their expressions mirroring my shock and fear. The handprints on the glass door remained, a haunting reminder of the night's encounter. The next morning, we sought answers from the hotel staff, but Mr. Tanaka was unusually evasive. "Is there something wrong?" he inquired, his eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. "Last night, we saw a shadowy figure on our balcony," I explained cautiously. "He vanished when we shone the light, but there were handprints on the glass." Mr. Tanaka's demeanor shifted subtly, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "I'm sorry to hear that. Sometimes Old buildings have peculiar occurrences. Perhaps it's just the wind or the settling of the structure. Unsatisfied with his vague response, I decided to delve deeper into the hotel's history. Through old records and whispered rumors among the local residents, I uncovered a tragic story that had long been buried beneath layers of time and silence. Decades ago, the Sakura Heights Hotel had been the site of a horrific incident. A man named Hiroshi Nakamura, a guest at the hotel, had disappeared without a trace during a winter storm. His body was never found, and the circumstances surrounding his disappearance remained a mystery. Over the years, guests reported sightings of his ghostly apparition, lingering in the shadows and appearing on balconies, seeking closure for his untimely death. Realizing that the figure we had seen was likely Hiroshi's restless spirit, we felt a deep sense of responsibility to help him find peace. That night, armed with knowledge and compassion, we decided to perform a ritual of remembrance on the balcony. We gathered candles, a photograph of Hiroshi we had found in the old records, and a few personal items that symbolized our intent to help him move on. As midnight approached, we lit the candles, their flames casting a warm glow against the cold darkness. "Hiroshi," I began softly, "we know your story. We're here to help you find peace." The air grew thick with anticipation, the atmosphere charged with an unspoken energy. As the clock struck 12, the shadows in the room seemed to deepen, the flickering candlelight dancing across the walls. The balcony door slid open, and the familiar figure of Hiroshi appeared once more, his eyes filled with sorrow and longing. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. "I can finally rest." A sense of calm washed over us as Hiroshi's apparition began to fade, his form dissolving into the night sky. The handprints on the glass door shimmered briefly before vanishing, leaving behind a serene stillness that enveloped the balcony. From that night on, the strange occurrences ceased. The shadowy figure never appeared again, and the unsettling handprints were gone, replaced by a peaceful ambience that settled over our stay. We spent the remainder of our vacation in tranquility, the memory of Hiroshi's restless spirit now a part of our family's story. Years later, the experience at Sakura Heights remains etched in my mind, a poignant reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown and the enduring power of empathy. If you ever find yourself in a place where shadows linger and the past refuses to stay buried, remember our story. Sometimes, the spirits that remain are not there to haunt but to seek acknowledgement and peace. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the closure it so desperately needs. Because in the quiet moments of winter, beneath the veil of snow and silence, the echoes of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 3. The Unsettling Bed. Winter in Mexico is a deceptive season. While the coastal regions bask in mild temperatures and the vibrant hum of tourists, the mountainous areas are cloaked in a serene, almost eerie stillness. It was in one such secluded resort, nestled deep within the Sierra Madre Mountains, that my partner, Laura, and I decided to spend our winter getaway. We were drawn to the promise of tranquility, far removed from the relentless pace of our daily lives. The resort, El Refugio, was charming in its rustic simplicity. Wooden cabins dotted the landscape, each one offering a unique blend of comfort and isolation. We had booked Cabin 12, a cozy abode with a stunning view of the snow-blanketed peaks and a warm, inviting fireplace. Upon arrival, we were greeted by Maria, the owner, whose warm smile and welcoming demeanor immediately put us at ease. "Our cabins are fully equipped," Maria assured us, handing over the keys. "Feel free to relax and enjoy your stay. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." We settled into Cabin 12, unpacking our belongings and exploring the quaint interior. The cabin was adorned with handmade furniture, thick woolen blankets, and a large, antique bed that seemed to be the centerpiece of the room. As night descended, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows and adding a layer of ominous ambience to our peaceful retreat. After dinner, Laura and I decided to unwind by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories. As the night deepened, exhaustion began to set in, and we retreated to bed, eager for a restful night's sleep. It was during the first night that the unsettling events began. Around midnight, a gentle vibration pulsed through the bed, accompanied by faint whispers that seemed to emanate from beneath the mattress. Laura stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, her voice tinged with unease. I nodded, my heart racing. Yeah, it felt like something was moving underneath us. We both sat up, peering into the darkness below the bed. The room was still, the only movement coming from the shadows cast by the flickering fireplace. The whispers continued, soft and indistinct, sending chills down our spines. Determined to rationalize the phenomenon, I reached under the bed, but found nothing, no signs of movement, no objects out of place. "Maybe it's just the wind or the old cabin settling," I suggested, trying to mask my fear. Laura nodded slowly, but the unease lingered. As we lay back down, the vibrations ceased, and the room returned to its tranquil state. Sleep eventually claimed us, but the memory of that night haunted our dreams, filled with shadowy figures and eerie whispers. The next morning, we shared our experience over breakfast with Maria, who listened intently, her expression thoughtful. Cabin 12 has a history," she began, her voice calm. "A few years ago, there was a tragic incident here. A young woman named Isabella Morales stayed in this cabin. She was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Some say her spirit remains, unable to find peace." Laura and I exchanged uneasy glances. "Do you know anything about what happened?" Laura asked softly. Maria shook her head. "Details are scarce, but the local legends speak of Isabella's restless spirit. Guests occasionally report strange occurrences, especially around midnight." Determined to uncover the truth, we decided to investigate further. That evening, we revisited the cabin, hoping to find clues that could explain the haunting presence. As night fell, the same eerie ambience enveloped us, the wind howling through the trees and the snow piling higher against the windows. Around midnight, the vibrations returned, stronger this time, accompanied by louder whispers. Laura and I sat up, our hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. The whispers were clearer now, fragments of sorrowful words that sent shivers down our spines. "I feel like someone is trying to communicate," Laura murmured, clutching my hand. Gathering our courage, we decided to confront the presence. "Isabella," I called out softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "We know you're here. We want to help you find peace." For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained still, the only sound the crackling of the fireplace. Then, the temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the icy air. The whispers intensified, swirling around us like a ghostly melody. Suddenly, the bed began to shake violently, the vibrations turning into a relentless thrumming that echoed through the cabin. Laura and I held onto each other, fear gripping our hearts as the whispers transformed into anguished cries. "Why can't you move on?" the voices seemed to plead, their sorrow palpable. Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she whispered, "We want to help you. Isabella, please, let us." In a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed a flashlight and shone it under the bed, revealing a hidden compartment. To our shock, we found a stack of old photographs and a diary, buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten memories. The diary belonged to Isabella Morales, detailing her final days at El Refugio. As we flipped through the pages, a chilling narrative unfolded. Isabella had come to the cabin seeking solitude, hoping to overcome personal demons that plagued her. But her stay took a dark turn when she confided in the diary about her fears and the haunting presence she felt within the cabin. The final entries spoke of a tragic accident, She had fallen from the balcony. Her body never recovered, leaving her spirit trapped in the very cabin she had sought refuge in. Realizing that Isabella's spirit was bound to the cabin by her untimely death, we knew we had to help her find closure. We decided to perform a ritual of remembrance, lighting candles and speaking words of peace, hoping to guide her spirit towards the light. As we completed the ritual, the oppressive energy in the room began to lift. The vibrations ceased, and the whispers softened into gentle sighs. The air felt lighter, the weight of sorrow dissipating like morning mist. "We did it," I said softly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. "We helped her find peace." Laura smiled through her tears, the fear that had once gripped us replaced by a profound sense of empathy and compassion. As dawn broke, the cabin felt serene and welcoming, the shadows of the past finally giving way to the promise of a peaceful future. In the days that followed, our stay at El Refugio continued without incident. The cabin remained a place of beauty and tranquility, its haunting past now a distant memory. We left the resort with a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that we had made a difference in the life of a lost soul. Years later, the memory of our winter retreat in Vermont remains vivid in my mind, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the mysteries that lie hidden within the echoes of the past. If you ever find yourself in a place where the shadows whisper and the walls hold untold stories, remember our experience. Sometimes, the spirits that linger are not there to haunt but to seek acknowledgement and peace. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the closure it so desperately needs. Because in the quiet moments of solitude, beneath the veil of winter's embrace, the whispers of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 4. The Woman in the Mirror. Summer in the English countryside holds a unique charm, endless fields of blooming flowers, quaint villages nestled among rolling hills, and the serene beauty of nature untouched by the relentless pace of city life. My wife, Emma, our 2 children, Lily and Jack, and I had long dreamed of a peaceful retreat away from the chaos of our daily routines. When we stumbled upon an advertisement for a charming, old apartment in a secluded village, we knew it was the perfect getaway we had been yearning for. The apartment was housed in a vintage building that exuded character and history. Upon arrival, we were greeted by Mr. Thompson, the landlord, a kindly old man with a warm smile and a wealth of local stories. He showed us around the cozy living space, highlighting the antique furnishings and the piece de resistance, a large, ornate mirror that dominated one wall of the living room. This gilded frame was intricately carved, and the glass seemed to hold a depth that was almost hypnotic. "Take good care of it," Mr. Thompson advised with a wink. "This mirror has been in the family for generations." We settled in, unpacking our belongings and exploring the picturesque surroundings. The first few days were idyllic, filled with leisurely walks, picnics by the lake, and evenings spent by the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. The mirror, however, remained an object of fascination for Emma. She often found herself gazing into it, captivated by its timeless elegance. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, we gathered in the living room for dinner. The ambience was perfect, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow across the room. After our meal, Emma decided to sit by the mirror, reflecting on the beauty of our surroundings. "I just love how this place feels so alive," she mused, her eyes fixed on her own reflection. "It's like the mirror captures the essence of this home." As the night grew darker, a sense of tranquility settled over us. The children were tucked into bed, and Emma and I found ourselves alone in the living room, the only sound the soft crackling of the fireplace. Emma continued to gaze into the mirror, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever feel like there's more to this mirror than meets the eye?" she asked softly, almost to herself. I chuckled, taking her hand. "You're being a bit superstitious now," Aren't you? She smiled, leaning into me. Maybe a little, but there's something comforting about it. As we sat together, the room enveloped in shadows. A faint, almost imperceptible movement caught Emma's eye. Her reflection seemed to shift subtly, the image of a woman appearing just behind her. A graceful figure dressed in flowing garments that shimmered like moonlight. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she stared, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Jack," she whispered urgently, reaching out to wake our son from his slumber. Jack rubbed his eyes groggily, still half dreaming. "What's wrong, Mum?" "Look at the mirror," Emma insisted, her voice trembling. "There's someone behind me." Jack and I turned our attention to the mirror, but all we saw was our own reflection staring back at us. Emma's face paled as she looked back, her eyes searching the glass for any sign of the mysterious woman. "It's gone," she murmured, a mix of relief and lingering fear evident in her voice. "I must have imagined it." We tried to brush it off as a trick of the light or the mind, but the unsettling feeling lingered in the air. That night, sleep was elusive as the image of the woman in the mirror haunted our dreams, filling them with whispers and shadows. The following day, we decided to learn more about the apartment and its history. We visited the local library, where old newspapers and records were meticulously archived. After hours of searching, we stumbled upon a series of articles about the previous owners of the apartment, a family that had lived there decades ago. According to the records, tragedy had struck when the young mother, Margaret Bennett, had mysteriously vanished without a trace, leaving her family in despair. The mirror had been the last item seen in her room before she disappeared, fueling local rumors that her spirit lingered, trapped within the antique glass. Emma and I exchanged uneasy glances, the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. That night, the atmosphere in the apartment felt charged, the air thick with an unspoken presence. Emma once again sat by the mirror, her eyes scanning the reflection for any sign of Margaret. "Mom, do you think the stories are true?" Lily's voice echoed from the hallway, her innocence contrasting sharply with the tension in the room. Emma nodded slowly. "I think we need to help her find peace." Determined to put an end to the haunting, we decided to perform a small ritual of remembrance. We gathered candles, a few personal items from our trip, and some flowers to honor Margaret's memory. As dusk turned to night, we lit the candles around the mirror, creating a circle of light that contrasted the darkness enveloping the room. "We're here to help you, Margaret," Emma whispered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "We want you to find peace." As we spoke, the temperature in the room dropped, the candles flickering wildly as if responding to our plea. The mirror began to glow softly, the image of Margaret becoming clearer, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. "Why can't you move on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you need from us?" Margaret's reflection reached out a hand, her expression pleading. "Remember me. Acknowledge my pain. Let me go." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she stepped closer to the mirror, her hand extending towards Margaret's apparition. "We're sorry you had to go through this alone," she said softly. "We remember you." In that moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The air grew warmer, the oppressive chill lifting as the presence of Margaret's spirit began to fade. The reflection of the woman in the mirror softened, her form becoming translucent before dissolving into the glass itself. The candles steadied, their flames burning brighter as the sense of peace settled over the apartment. As the night gave way to dawn, the mirror returned to its original state, reflecting our family without a trace of the haunting presence that had plagued us. The uneasy feeling that had gripped us was replaced by a profound sense of relief and closure. In the days that followed, the apartment felt lighter, the shadows less oppressive, and the mirror no longer held any lingering spirits. We spent the rest of our stay in peace, enjoying the beauty of the Vermont countryside without the fear that had once overshadowed our vacation. When we finally left the apartment, the sun shining brightly over the snow-covered landscape, We felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had not only found the tranquility we sought, but had also helped a lost soul find the peace she so desperately needed. Years later, the memory of that summer remains vivid in my mind, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the mysteries that lie hidden within the reflections of our lives. If you ever find yourself in a place where the past lingers and the shadows whisper untold stories, remember our experience. Sometimes, the spirits that remain are not there to haunt but to seek acknowledgement and peace. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the closure it so desperately needs. Because in the quiet moments of reflection, beneath the surface of everyday life, the echoes of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 5. Lights across the lake. Winter in the remote stretches of northern Canada is a study in contrasts. The serene beauty of snow-covered pines and the stillness of frozen lakes mask the isolation that seeps into every corner of these vast expanses. My friends and I had always yearned for an escape from the chaos of city life, and when the opportunity arose to rent a secluded cabin by Lake Wisp, we jumped at the chance. Little did we know, our winter retreat would become a nightmare etched into our memories forever. It was late November when we arrived at the cabin, a rustic structure nestled on the edge of Lake Wisp. The drive through the winding mountain roads was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking, the snowstorm raging around us as if nature itself was testing our resolve. Finally, the cabin emerged through the blizzard, its wooden frame sturdy against the harsh elements. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, promising warmth and shelter from the storm outside. Inside, the cabin was cozy, adorned with wooden beams and a roaring fireplace that instantly made us feel at home. We unpacked our gear, eager to settle in and enjoy the winter wonderland that awaited us. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the wind howled through the trees, making the cabin creak and groan as if it were alive. After dinner, we gathered in the living room, sipping hot cocoa and sharing stories to stave off the creeping unease that the isolation brought. It was then that Sarah, our unofficial leader, pointed out the large window overlooking the lake. "Look at that," she whispered, her breath fogging the glass. "There's an abandoned house across the water. I wonder who used to live there." I followed her gaze, squinting through the darkness. The house was dilapidated, its windows boarded up and the roof sagging under the weight of the snow. For a moment, everything seemed still, the only movement the flickering lights from the cabin reflecting off the ice-covered lake. But then, out of nowhere, a series of rapid, erratic flashes of light emanated from the abandoned house. "Did you guys see that?" Mike asked, leaning closer to the window. "Yeah," I replied, my heart skipping a beat. It looked like someone was trying to signal us. Curiosity got the better of us. We decided to investigate the next morning, despite the lingering chill and the storm that showed no signs of abating. But as dawn broke, the sky was clear, and the lake lay calm under a pale winter sun. The lights had vanished, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the whole scene feel like a frozen tableau. That night, the storm returned with a vengeance, the wind howling louder and the snow piling higher against the cabin walls. As we settled in for another restless night, the memory of the mysterious lights weighed heavily on our minds. We tried to push it aside, convincing ourselves it was just a trick of the light or perhaps another traveler seeking shelter. But hours later, a different kind of sound pierced the silence, soft, deliberate footsteps scuttling across the cabin's roof. We froze, listening intently as the sound grew louder, more persistent. "Did anyone else hear that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, my pulse racing. "Yeah, it sounded like someone walking on the roof." We exchanged uneasy glances, the fear of the unknown tightening its grip on us. Sarah suggested checking the roof, but the thought of venturing out into the blizzard was daunting. Reluctantly, we agreed to investigate, armed with flashlights and bundled in every layer of clothing we owned. Climbing the narrow ladder to the roof was a struggle, the cold biting through our gloves and making our movements sluggish. Once atop, the wind whipped around us, making it difficult to keep our footing. I scanned the area, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but saw nothing out of the ordinary, no signs of recent activity, no footprints in the fresh snow. Maybe it was an animal, Mike suggested, trying to rationalize the situation. But as we began to descend, a sudden, piercing shriek echoed through the night, sending shivers down our spines. We froze, the sound lingering in the air like a ghostly wail. Without warning, the abandoned house across the lake erupted in a series of blinding lights, each flash more intense than the last. The reflection on the ice shimmered with an unnatural glow, making the entire scene feel surreal and otherworldly. "We need to get out of here," Emily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. We hurried back inside, the atmosphere in the cabin thick with tension and dread. The sounds of the storm seemed amplified, every creak and groan of the old house magnified by our heightened senses. Sleep was impossible, our minds racing with questions and fear. The next morning, we decided to gather our belongings and leave, hoping to put the unsettling events behind us. As we packed, Sarah discovered a stack of old newspapers and maps in the attic, remnants of previous guests or perhaps forgotten histories of the cabin. Intrigued, we sifted through them, uncovering a story that sent a chill down our spines. The cabin had been a popular getaway spot for families and couples, much like us. But 2 years prior, a tragic accident had occurred on the lake. A car had skidded on the ice, crashing into a tree. The driver, a man named David Collins, had perished in the wreckage, his family left to mourn his untimely death. The abandoned house across the lake was once his home, left to decay after the tragedy. Maybe David's spirit is trying to reach out, Mike mused, the pieces of the puzzle starting to come together. We felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to help the restless soul of David Collins find peace. That night, we decided to perform a small ritual of remembrance by the lake, lighting candles and speaking softly into the darkness, honoring his memory and expressing our hope that he could move on from the tragic past. As we lit the candles, the air seemed to grow warmer, the oppressive cold lifting slightly. The lights from the abandoned house flickered one last time before fading into the night, replaced by a serene stillness that enveloped the lake. We felt a sense of calm wash over us, the tension in the air dissipating as if a weight had been lifted. We left the cabin the following day, the memory of our stay lingering like a shadow in our minds. The storm had passed, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow and a tranquil lake that now felt like a peaceful sanctuary rather than a site of mystery and fear. As we drove away, the abandoned house across the lake stood silent and still, its lights gone, replaced by the soft reflection of the morning sun on the ice. In the years that followed, we often thought back to that winter vacation, the eerie lights, and the haunting footsteps that had once plagued our nights. The story of David Collins became a poignant reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the dead, and the enduring power of compassion and remembrance. If you ever find yourself seeking solitude in the remote reaches of winter, renting a cabin by a frozen lake, remember our story. Sometimes, the echoes of the past reach out to us in the most unexpected ways, seeking acknowledgement and closure. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the peace it so desperately needs. Because in the heart of winter, beneath the blanket of snow and silence, the whispers of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 6. Reflections in the Frame. Winter in Vermont possesses a haunting beauty. The snow-covered pines stand tall and silent, their branches heavy with the weight of freshly fallen flakes. The crisp air carries a sense of isolation, perfect for those seeking solitude or, perhaps, a respite from the chaos of everyday life. My family and I decided to rent a secluded motel house nestled deep within these woods. eager to embrace the tranquility and spend quality time together away from the bustling city. As we approached the motel, the first hint of unease settled in. The building was old, its wooden exterior weathered by countless winters, and the parking area was sparse, with only a few vehicles scattered across the lot. Despite its outward charm, there was something undeniably eerie about the place, a feeling that we were stepping into a storybook tale with a dark twist. Upon entering the house, we were greeted by the warm glow of a roaring fireplace and the comforting scent of pine. The interior was cozy, adorned with rustic furnishings and antique decor that added to its old-world charm. However, it was the living room that immediately caught our attention. A large wall dominated the space, covered entirely with framed photographs of families who had stayed at the motel before us. "Look at all these photos," my wife, Emily, remarked, walking over to examine them. "It's like they wanted to remember every family that stayed here." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fascination and unease. "It's kind of creepy, though, like we're part of something bigger." Our two children, Sarah and Michael, played nearby, unaware of the unsettling atmosphere that had settled over us. We spent the evening enjoying each other's company, sharing stories, and sipping hot cocoa by the fire. The night was peaceful, the only sounds being the crackling of the flames and the occasional howl of the wind outside. As midnight approached, the temperature dropped further, and the wind intensified, causing the old windows to rattle ominously. Laura, my wife, suggested we all retire to our respective rooms for some much-needed rest. We agreed, heading upstairs to our designated quarters. Before we left the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the wall of photos. I glanced back, and my eyes landed on a particular frame that sent a chill down my spine. There, nestled among the smiling faces of previous guests, was a picture of my family, Emily, Sarah, Michael, and me smiling brightly, our eyes filled with joy. But how was that possible? We had never been here before. "Did you guys see that?" I asked, pointing at the photo. Emily followed my gaze, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "That's impossible. We're the first family staying here this season." Sarah tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly. "Look, Dad, there's us in the picture." Michael, ever the skeptic, laughed nervously. "Maybe it's a family who looked just like us. People do have similar features." Despite his attempt to lighten the mood, the unease remained. We decided to set the photo aside, convincing ourselves it was a mere coincidence or perhaps a prank by the motel staff. That night, sleep was elusive. The image of our family smiling on a wall we had never adorned our own room with lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of an unexplained anomaly. The next morning, we awoke to a fresh blanket of snow covering the landscape. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting a soft glow on the pristine white ground. Determined to put the previous night's unease behind us, we went about our day, exploring the nearby trails and enjoying the winter scenery. After lunch, we decided to do a little more investigating of the motel. As we wandered through the hallways, we noticed more photographs adorning the walls, each one capturing a moment of happiness and togetherness. It was a heartwarming display, but the memory of the mysterious photo still nagged at me. Later that afternoon, Emily approached me with a stack of old yearbooks and guest books she had found in a storage closet. "Look what I found," she said, excitement lighting up her eyes. "It's filled with signatures and messages from families who stayed here over the years." We flipped through the pages, reading messages of gratitude, memories of vacations, and notes about the peacefulness of the location. Everything seemed normal, until we reached the last entry on the final page. It was dated just 2 days prior to our arrival and read, "Thank you for staying at Willowbrook. May your stay be as memorable and joyful as the families before you. Warm regards, the management." A shiver ran down my spine. That's only 2 days before we arrived. Why isn't our family listed? Emily shrugged, confusion evident on her face. Maybe our names got misplaced or something. Strange, though, that evening, as the sun set and the shadows lengthened, the atmosphere in the motel grew colder, the wind whispering through the trees outside like ghostly voices. We gathered in the living room again, trying to shake off the lingering tension. As darkness enveloped the room, the familiar feeling of being watched returned. I glanced at the wall of photos once more, and to my horror, saw another image that hadn't been there before, a picture of our family standing in front of the motel, smiling just as we had seen the other families. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an unspoken presence. "What's happening?" Michael asked, his voice wavering with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to leave." We packed our things hastily, the atmosphere in the house now oppressive and suffocating. As we descended the stairs, the sounds of footsteps echoed through the hallway, followed by the distant sound of laughter, soft, haunting, and filled with sorrow. When we reached the front desk, it was empty. Mrs. Thompson, the innkeeper, was nowhere to be found. We called out her name, but only received the sound of the wind outside in response. Panic set in as we realized we were alone in a house that felt far too alive. I grabbed my keys and hurried to the parking lot. But when I checked the surveillance cameras, they showed nothing unusual, no one entering or exiting the building. No signs of forced entry, just the empty lot and the endless snowstorm outside. "Let's go," I urged, pulling my family towards the car. But as we reached the parking lot, the doors of our room began to slam shut on their own, the windows rattling violently. The laughter grew louder, more frantic, echoing through the motel like a chorus of lost souls. I fumbled with the keys, trying desperately to unlock the doors, but they refused to budge. "We're trapped," Laura cried, her voice breaking with fear. In a last-ditch effort, I remembered the photographs. Perhaps there was something we could do to break the curse that seemed to have befallen us. We rushed back into the living room, gathering the old yearbooks and guestbooks once more. "This might help," Emily said, clutching the last entry we had read. "Maybe acknowledging the previous guests will set things right." We stood before the wall of photos, holding the yearbooks high. "We see you," I called out, my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. "We acknowledge your memories and honor your stories." The room began to shimmer, the lights flickering as if responding to our plea. The temperature rose slightly, the oppressive darkness lifting as the presence that had haunted us began to dissipate. The laughter softened, turning into a gentle whisper that seemed to embrace us with warmth. Slowly, the doors and windows unlocked themselves, the shadows retreating into the corners of the room. The last of the spectral laughter faded, replaced by a serene silence that filled the space with peace. "We did it," Laura whispered, her eyes shining with relief. "We're free." As we hurriedly made our way to the car, the storm outside had lessened, the snow now falling gently like a soft blanket over the world. We drove away from the Willowbrook Inn, the memories of our harrowing experience lingering like a ghostly echo in our minds. In the years that followed, we often spoke of that winter night, the mysterious motel, and the apparitions that sought recognition and remembrance. The Willowbrook Inn remained a place of legend in the town, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the unseen bonds that tie us to those who came before. If you ever find yourself staying in a place where the past lingers and the shadows hold untold stories, remember our experience. Sometimes, the spirits that remain are not there to haunt but to seek acknowledgement and peace. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless soul find the closure it so desperately needs. Because in the quiet moments of solitude, beneath the veil of winter's embrace, the echoes of the past can reach out to touch the present, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. They simply wait to be heard. Story number 7. The Empty Wing. Winter in the suburbs of Maine is a deceptive beauty. The snow blankets the quiet streets, turning familiar paths into uncharted white expanses. In December 2013, my wife, Laura, and I decided to escape the hustle of city life for a weekend getaway. We booked a room at the Willowbrook Inn, a quaint, old-fashioned hotel nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy town I'd never visited before. The place had charm, with its vintage decor and cozy fireplaces, promising a perfect retreat from our busy lives. The drive there was serene, the road winding through thick forests where the snow muffled every sound, creating an almost otherworldly silence. As we approached the inn, its warm, inviting lights flickered through the snowstorm, a beacon of comfort against the harsh winter night. The inn stood proudly, its wooden facade adorned with festive wreaths and twinkling lights. Despite the secluded location, upon arrival, we were greeted by an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, the innkeeper. She had a kind smile and a voice that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom. "Welcome to Willowbrook Inn," she said warmly. "We're delighted to have you here." We were shown to our room, room 204, located in a wing of the inn that seemed quieter and more secluded than the others. The room was charming, with antique furniture, a large window overlooking the snow-covered grounds, and a fireplace that crackled invitingly. Laura and I settled in, unpacking our bags and preparing for a restful night. That first evening, as we relaxed by the fire, the wind howled outside, making the old windows rattle. We enjoyed a quiet dinner in the dining room, where Mrs. Thompson served a hearty meal with a side of local folklore. She mentioned that the Willowbrook Inn had stood for over a century, weathering countless storms and welcoming travelers from far and wide. Her stories were captivating, filled with tales of the inn's history and the people who had passed through its doors. As midnight approached, the storm outside intensified, the snow piling higher and the wind howling louder. Laura and I decided to retire early, craving the warmth and comfort of our room. Just as we were drifting off to sleep, a faint sound pierced the silence, a soft, rhythmic tapping at our door. "Did you hear that?" Laura whispered, sitting up in bed. I nodded, my heart racing. The tapping continued, growing slightly louder, more insistent. "It must be someone outside," I murmured, reaching for the lamp to illuminate the room. We exchanged uneasy glances before I cautiously approached the door. The tapping ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door a crack to peer into the hallway. The corridor was empty, bathed in the dim glow of the overhead lights. There was no sign of anyone, just the heavy snowfall outside. "Probably just the wind," I said, trying to reassure both of us. "Maybe someone got lost in the storm." We closed the door and returned to bed, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Moments later, another sound echoed through the room, a soft knocking, this time on the window. Laura and I jumped, our eyes wide with fear. I approached the window and pulled back the curtain, only to see the empty, snow-covered grounds. No one was there, and the window was firmly shut. Shaking off the fear, we tried to go back to sleep, but the night was restless. The storm showed no signs of abating, and the noises seemed to play tricks on our minds. Every creak of the old building, every gust of wind outside, heightened our anxiety. The next morning, the storm had finally subsided, leaving behind a serene blanket of snow. Exhausted, Laura and I decided to explore the inn, hoping to shake off the lingering fear from the previous night. As we walked through the halls, we noticed that room 204 seemed slightly different, more worn, as if it had been vacant for longer than we realized. The furnishings were dustier, and the wallpaper showed signs of age and neglect. Curious, we approached the reception desk to speak with Mrs. Thompson, but she was nowhere to be found. The front desk was empty, and the keys to the various rooms were neatly arranged, except for one, a set of keys to the abandoned West Wing, a section of the inn that had been closed off for years. Laura picked up the keys, a puzzled expression on her face. "I thought this wing was closed." I nodded, equally confused. "Me too." Maybe Mrs. Thompson forgot to mention something. Deciding to investigate, we unlocked the door to the West Wing and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was almost deafening. The hallway was dimly lit, the floorboards creaking under our weight as we made our way down the corridor. The abandoned rooms looked as if they hadn't been touched in decades, filled with remnants of the past, old furniture, broken glass, and faded photographs. As we entered one of the rooms, a chill ran down my spine. The room was eerily familiar, almost identical to our own, but devoid of any personal touches. Laura approached the bed, noticing that it was neatly made, the sheets pristine despite the years of abandonment. A sudden thought struck me. Room 204 wasn't always ours. According to Mrs. Thompson's stories, it had once belonged to a couple who had stayed there many years ago during a harsh winter storm, much like ours. I glanced around the room, my eyes settling on an old, faded photograph on the nightstand. It depicted a young couple smiling warmly, their eyes full of life and hope. The man in the photo looked strikingly similar to me, and the woman resembled Laura. A sense of unease settled over me as I realized that we might not be the first to experience these unexplained phenomena. Determined to uncover the truth, we decided to spend the day at the inn, speaking with any remaining staff and digging deeper into its history. Mrs. Thompson was still nowhere to be found, and the other staff members offered no new information. The inn seemed to hold its secrets tightly, the walls whispering tales of the past that refused to stay buried. That night, as darkness enveloped the inn once more, the same eerie sounds began to surface. This time, the footsteps were louder, more deliberate, echoing through the hallways with a sense of purpose. The knocking returned, more frantic and desperate than before. Laura and I exchanged worried glances, our fears mounting as the noises grew closer. I approached the door once more, this time more resolute, determined to find the source of the disturbances. The tapping resumed, now accompanied by soft whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. I took a deep breath and opened the door, revealing the empty hallway bathed in the dim light. As I stepped outside, the hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the snow still thick on the ground. The sounds of footsteps and knocking followed me. Though no one was in sight, I turned back to Laura, who was watching me with wide eyes, her fear mirrored in my own. "We need to leave," she whispered, grabbing my arm. "This place isn't safe." But before we could retreat, a shadowy figure materialized at the end of the hallway, its form indistinct and wavering like smoke in the wind. The figure began to move towards us, the sounds of its footsteps growing louder, more insistent. My heart pounded as I took a step forward, trying to confront whatever haunted the Willowbrook Inn. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fear. The figure paused, its presence overwhelming, filling the hallway with an oppressive energy. "Remember us?" it whispered, the words barely audible over the howling wind outside. Before I could respond, the figure dissolved into the air, leaving behind only the lingering echoes of its plea. The noises subsided, the silence returning like a heavy blanket. Laura and I stood there, shaken and bewildered, trying to make sense of the encounter. The next morning, we returned to the abandoned West Wing, determined to find answers. As we entered room 204 once more, the photograph had changed. The couple in the picture was now pale and ghostly, their eyes hollow and devoid of life. A cold chill filled the room, and the air felt heavy with sorrow. Laura reached out to touch the photo, her fingers trembling. "What does this mean?" I sighed, the weight of our experience pressing down on me. "I think we need to help them. They're trapped here, unable to move on." Determined to bring peace to the restless spirits, we decided to perform a ritual of remembrance. We gathered candles, flowers, and personal items that we thought might honor their memory. Lighting the candles, we spoke softly, recounting their story and expressing our hope that they could finally find the peace they sought. As the room filled with the soft glow of candlelight, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and serenity. The photograph on the nightstand began to glow softly, the couple's faces now peaceful and content. Thank you. A voice echoed through the room, gentle and filled with gratitude. The shadows receded, and the room felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from its very walls. We stood there in silence, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment and closure. The spirits had found their peace, their presence no longer a source of fear but a testament to the enduring power of remembrance and compassion. In the days that followed, the Willowbrook Inn seemed to breathe easier, the strange noises ceasing entirely. Mrs. Thompson returned, her eyes filled with a knowing wisdom. "You've done something wonderful," she said softly. "Sometimes, all we need is someone to remember our stories." Laura and I left the inn the next morning, the memory of our stay lingering like a warm embrace. The Willowbrook Inn stood proudly against the winter landscape, its secrets now shared and its ghosts finally at rest. If you ever find yourself staying at a secluded place where the past refuses to stay buried, remember our story. Sometimes, the echoes of those who came before reach out, seeking acknowledgement and peace. Honor their memories, listen to their silent pleas, and you may just help a restless spirit find the closure it so desperately needs. Because in the quiet corners of the night, beneath the veil of snow and silence, the whispers of the past linger, waiting for someone to listen, someone to remember,